The quest to choose oneself above all else is not a new endeavor. It is as old as human consciousness itself. In the deepest recesses of the unconscious, the self stirs, calling out for recognition. But this calling is not always clear. It is obscured by the forces of societal expectations, familial obligations, and the noise of the external world. We live in a culture that encourages conformity, that rewards the suppression of the individual for the sake of the collective. And yet, there is an innate part of each of us, buried deep within, that yearns for autonomy, for selfhood. When we speak of choosing oneself, we do not speak of egoism or narcissism. No, we speak of an act of profound self-realization, of an individuation process in which the conscious mind seeks to reconcile with the unconscious. The self is not merely the ego that stands before the world. It is a synthesis of all the parts of the psyche-known and unknown, light and shadow. When one chooses to recognize the self, one does not reject the world, but rather embraces it, integrated with the deeper truths of the psyche. Choosing yourself above all else means acknowledging the complexity of your being. It is not an act of defiance, but one of acceptance. In this choice, you are accepting that you are more than what you present to others. The external world is not the true measure of who you are. The measure of the self is found within, in that quiet voice of the unconscious that speaks through dreams, through symbols, through the art of living authentically. It is only when you turn inward, acknowledging this silent, often unsettling voice, that you begin to understand the true meaning of choice. In the process of individuation, there is no forceful rejection of the world, but an integration of the conscious and unconscious that brings balance, strength, and vitality to the self. And in choosing yourself, you honor the fullness of your being, allowing the layers of your existence to unfold into a singular, unified whole. One of the primary obstacles to choosing oneself is the shadow, the aspect of the psyche that we refuse to acknowledge. It is the dark, hidden side of our personality, the traits we do not wish to recognize, the desires and fears we hide from the light of our awareness. The shadow is formed by our repressions, by the parts of us that do not conform to the ideals we hold dear. And yet, the shadow is not an enemy. It is a vital part of who we are. To choose yourself is to confront the shadow, to look within and see those aspects of yourself that you have long denied. It is an uncomfortable journey, for the shadow is often unpleasant, even frightening. But it is only through the acceptance of these darker parts of ourselves that we can achieve true integration. In the shadow lies untapped potential, the raw energy that has been suppressed for too long, waiting to be harnessed for growth. In the process of individuation, you must meet the shadow not with disdain or fear, but with curiosity and compassion. The parts of you that have been banished to the unconscious hold the keys to your wholeness. It is when you bring them into the light of consciousness that you can experience the fullness of your being. The path is not easy, but it is necessary. For in choosing yourself, you must embrace all that you are, including the parts of you that are uncomfortable and inconvenient. The shadow, when accepted and integrated, becomes a source of strength, creativity, and vitality. By acknowledging and integrating the shadow, you transcend the dualities of light and dark, good and evil, and enter a realm of wholeness where the self is not fragmented, but united. The act of choosing yourself is, in many ways, the act of choosing to live in full, authentic alignment with both your conscious and unconscious selves. The ego is often mistaken for the self. It is the part of our psyche that we identify with, the face we present to the world. And yet, the ego is but a small fragment of the true self. It is an essential aspect of the psyche, but it is not the whole. The ego is shaped by the external world, by the roles we play, and by the expectations others place upon us. The true self, however, lies beneath these layers, hidden in the unconscious, waiting to be discovered. Choosing yourself requires the discernment to distinguish the ego from the true self. The ego, with all its desires for approval, power, and security, is a product of the external world. The true self, however, is a product of the internal world. It is the integration of the conscious and unconscious mind, the full acknowledgement of your internal world and its truths. It is only when you stop identifying solely with the ego that you can begin to experience the richness of the true self. The ego is often in conflict with the true self, for the true self seeks authenticity, while the ego seeks validation. The ego is not inherently evil, but it is incomplete. It is a necessary aspect of the psyche, yet it must be transcended if one is to experience the fullness of life. When you choose yourself, you choose to free yourself from the limited confines of the ego and to embrace the broader, deeper dimensions of who you truly are. It is through the process of individuation that the ego and the true self are reconciled. This process is not one of annihilation but of integration. The ego must not be destroyed but transformed, so that it may align with the deeper, more authentic parts of the psyche. Choosing yourself means stepping into this deeper, more expansive space and learning to live in harmony with both your conscious and unconscious mind. The unconscious mind holds the mysteries of the self. It is a vast, uncharted territory that contains the forgotten, the hidden, and the repressed. It is also the source of creativity, intuition, and deep wisdom. The unconscious is not something to be feared, rather, it is something to be understood and embraced. When we choose ourselves, we choose to enter this realm of the unconscious and to make its hidden wisdom accessible to our conscious mind. In choosing yourself, you embark on a journey into the depths of your unconscious. You will encounter symbols, dreams, and archetypes, representations of the inner workings of your psyche. These are not mere fantasies or illusions. They are messages from the deeper layers of the self, offering guidance, insight, and transformation. The unconscious speaks in symbols, and it is through these symbols that the psyche communicates its deepest desires and truths. The unconscious is also a repository of the archetypes, the fundamental patterns of the human experience. These archetypes are universal, shared by all human beings, yet they manifest uniquely in each individual. By choosing to confront the unconscious, you engage with these archetypes, allowing them to shape and guide your journey towards self-realization. But this process is not easy. The unconscious is often irrational, chaotic, and difficult to understand. However, it is only through embracing this chaos that we can achieve true transformation. Choosing yourself means surrendering to the flow of the unconscious, allowing its wisdom to guide you on your path of individuation. This is not a path of certainty, but one of discovery, where each step brings you closer to your true, authentic self. The call to individuation is a call to become whole. It is an invitation to step away from the collective, from the roles that society has imposed upon you, and to turn inward to discover the uniqueness that resides within you. It is a call to follow a path that may seem lonely and isolating at times, but is ultimately the path that leads to your true self. This journey is not a path of comfort, but of necessity. It is through individuation that the self is realized in its fullest form. When you answer the call to individuation, you begin to separate yourself from the external expectations that have shaped you. You stop living for others and begin living for yourself. But this does not mean abandoning the world. Rather, it means engaging with the world from a place of inner strength and authenticity. The individual who has chosen to embark on this path is no longer swayed by the opinions of others, for they have come to understand that their true path lies within. Individuation is a journey of integration, where the different parts of the psyche, conscious and unconscious, ego and shadow, are brought into harmony. It is not a journey of self-improvement or self-optimization, it is a journey of self-realization. It is about shedding the layers of falsehoods that have accumulated over time and stepping into the fullness of your being. In choosing this path, you choose to live authentically, embracing the fullness of who you are, even if it means confronting parts of yourself that you may have once rejected. The path of individuation is a never-ending one. There is no final destination, no ultimate completion. Rather, it is a process of continual growth and transformation. Choosing yourself is not a singular decision. It is a way of life, an ongoing commitment to becoming who you truly are. It is the constant striving to align your inner world with your outer reality, to live in accordance with your deepest truth. To choose oneself is to take full responsibility for one's life. It is easy to blame the world, others, or even fate for the circumstances we find ourselves in. But true transformation occurs when we recognize that we are the architects of our own existence. We must own our choices, our mistakes, and our victories. No one else can walk your path for you, and no one else can claim your personal power. This is your journey, and you must walk it with integrity and courage. Self-responsibility is the foundation of self-empowerment. It is the understanding that, while external circumstances may shape our lives, we are the ones who have the ultimate power to choose how we respond to them. Choosing yourself means taking ownership of your inner life, the thoughts, emotions, and actions that shape your reality. It is about understanding that you are not a passive victim of life, but an active participant in the creation of your own destiny. However, self-responsibility also means acknowledging the darker aspects of the self. It means taking responsibility for the parts of you that are uncomfortable, inconvenient, or even painful. It is easy to deny or project our flaws onto others, but true self-awareness requires that we face our own shortcomings with honesty and compassion. By doing so, we reclaim the power to change and to grow. In the process of choosing yourself, self-responsibility becomes a sacred act of empowerment. You are no longer waiting for someone else to give you permission to be yourself. You are no longer looking for external validation. You are choosing to stand in your own power and to take full responsibility for the life you are creating. This act of self-ownership is the key to unlocking your potential and stepping into your true self. Life, as we know, is filled with contradictions, opposites, and paradoxes. There is no singular truth, no one way to live, for we are all part of a larger, more complex system of dualities. Choosing oneself requires the courage to embrace these contradictions rather than avoid them. You will find that in this process, you must hold seemingly opposing forces within yourself: light and dark, strength and vulnerability, success and failure. These opposites do not negate each other, rather, they are complementary. The tension between them is what gives life its depth and meaning. To choose yourself is to accept that life is not a linear journey, but a dynamic dance of opposing forces. It is through this dance that the self is created and recreated. The paradoxes of life, when embraced, lead to the richness of the human experience. We often seek to resolve these contradictions, to simplify the complexities of life. But true wisdom lies in accepting and integrating the paradoxes. It is only through the reconciliation of opposites that we achieve wholeness. The individual who chooses themselves does not strive for perfect harmony or consistency. Instead, they learn to live with the tension and contradictions that define the human condition. This is where the true power of the self lies. In this acceptance of paradox, we find our freedom. We are no longer bound by rigid definitions or black and white thinking. Instead, we allow ourselves to be fully human, with all of our complexities and contradictions. This is the essence of individuation, the integration of all aspects of the self, including those that appear to be contradictory. In choosing yourself, You embrace the dance of opposites, and in doing so, you find your true path. Relationships are not mere connections to others. They are mirrors of the self. Through our interactions with others, we come face to face with our own projections, our desires, and our fears. Choosing yourself requires an understanding that relationships are a reflection of your inner world. They are opportunities for self-awareness and growth. The people who enter your life are not accidental. They are mirrors that show you who you truly are. When you choose yourself, you choose to see others not as objects to be used or controlled, but as reflections of your own unconscious. In every relationship, there is an opportunity for individuation. By looking at how others affect you, whether they challenge, provoke, or inspire you, you gain insight into the parts of yourself that you have yet to understand. Relationships are not simply about love or companionship. They are opportunities for self-reflection and self-knowledge. But to truly embrace the transformative power of relationships, you must be willing to confront your projections. We often project our unresolved issues, our unmet needs, and our unacknowledged desires onto others. In choosing yourself, you learn to look beyond these projections and see others for who they truly are, as well as to understand what they reflect back to you about your own psyche. It is only through this process that you can cultivate genuine, authentic relationships. In relationships, we also encounter our shadows. The qualities we dislike in others often reflect the parts of ourselves that we have rejected. By embracing these aspects, we can dissolve the barriers between ourselves and others, leading to deeper, more meaningful connections. Choosing yourself, therefore, also means choosing to engage with others in an honest, self-aware manner, allowing your relationships to become powerful catalysts for growth and self-realization. In the ancient tradition of alchemy, there is a process known as transmutation, the turning of base metals into gold. In much the same way, the journey of individuation is a process of alchemical transformation. The base metal is the unintegrated, fragmented self, the ego, the shadow, the unconscious. The gold is the realization of the true self, the integration of all parts of the psyche into a unified whole. To choose yourself is to engage in this alchemical process. Transmutation requires both the willingness to face discomfort and the courage to surrender to the unknown. It is a process of transformation that occurs not on the surface, but deep within the soul. The journey to the true self is not one of simple self-improvement or personal growth. It is a process of radical change, of turning the raw material of the psyche into something more refined and whole. In this alchemical process, you must undergo the dissolution of the egoids, false beliefs, its attachments to external validation, its desires for power and control. As the ego dissolves, the true self emerges from the depths of the unconscious, not as a perfect, flawless being, but as a complex, integrated whole. This process is both painful and liberating, for in shedding the false layers of the ego, you come to know yourself more fully. Just as alchemists sought to turn lead into gold, so too do you seek to turn the base elements of your unconscious into the gold of self-knowledge. By choosing yourself, you enter this sacred process of transformation where the alchemy of the soul takes place. And in this transformation, you become a more authentic, powerful version of yourself, one who has been refined and forged in the fires of the unconscious. While the process of choosing yourself is deeply personal, it also leads to a paradoxical realization. The true self is not confined to the individual. As you deepen into your authentic being, you will eventually find that the individual self is part of something greater, something that transcends the personal. The self is not a solitary entity, but a unique expression of the collective unconscious. In choosing yourself, you paradoxically come to understand that you are never truly alone, for you are interconnected with all of humanity. The experience of individuation reveals the interconnectedness of all things. When we begin the journey to choose ourselves, we think we are embarking on a path of individual liberation. However, the deeper we journey, the more we realize that the self is part of a larger cosmic order. The archetypes, the symbols, the dream soul, these elements are shared across humanity, across time and space. In choosing yourself, you do not isolate yourself from the world, but rather connect to it on a deeper, more profound level. This realization brings with it a sense of humility and awe. The individual self, once seen as separate and isolated, is now understood as part of a greater collective whole. The self is both an individual expression and a universal archetype. The path of individuation does not end with the realization of the personal self. It leads to an understanding that each of us is a part of the larger, interconnected web of life. The more fully you realize your own self, the more deeply you connect with the self of others. In choosing yourself, you come to realize that the journey is not just about personal fulfillment, but about participating in the collective evolution of humanity. The self you are discovering is not a fixed point, but a dynamic, evolving expression of the greater whole. The more you choose yourself, the more you transcend the boundaries of the individual and merge with the universal, participating in the eternal flow of life. The path of choosing oneself is not without suffering. In fact, suffering is an integral part of the process. We often wish to avoid pain and discomfort, but it is through suffering that the deepest transformations occur. The pain of facing your shadow, the discomfort of confronting your fears, and the grief of letting go of the old self are all necessary for growth. To choose yourself is to choose to endure the trials and tribulations of life in order to emerge stronger, wiser, and more whole. Suffering is not something to be feared or avoided. It is a necessary catalyst for the transformation of the soul. The process of individuation is, in many ways, a process of continuous sacrifice, the sacrifice of old identities, of familiar comforts, and of illusions. It is through the destruction of the old self that the new self can be born. Each pain you endure is not a sign of defeat, but a sign of progress. You are shedding the layers of the false self, creating space for the emergence of the true self. While the experience of suffering can feel isolating and overwhelming, it is important to remember that suffering is a shared human experience. No one is exempt from it. Each person who chooses themselves must face their own inner battles. And yet, it is through these battles that we grow, that we move closer to the authentic, integrated self. The paradox of suffering is that it leads to liberation. It is through the fire of pain that the gold of the self is refined. Choosing yourself means accepting that suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience. It is not something to be avoided, but something to be embraced. In the act of embracing your suffering, you become stronger, more resilient, and more attuned to the deeper currents of life. You no longer see suffering as a hindrance, but as a necessary and transformative force in your journey toward wholeness. Within each of us lies the archetype of the wise old man or woman, the inner guide, who offers wisdom and direction on the path of individuation. This archetype represents the deeper wisdom of the unconscious, the accumulated knowledge of the soul that has been passed down through generations. When you choose yourself, you are also choosing to listen to this inner voice of wisdom, the quiet presence that guides you when the outer world is chaotic and uncertain. The wise old man is not an external authority but an internal presence. He resides within you as part of your unconscious psyche, and his wisdom is not bound by time or space. The more you cultivate an inner connection to this archetype, the more you will find clarity in your decisions and peace amidst the storms of life. The wise old man is the embodiment of deep understanding, and through his guidance, you come to realize that you are not navigating life alone. This inner guide does not offer simple answers or solutions. Instead, he points you toward deeper questions, guiding you to look inward for the answers that lie buried within. The wisdom of the archetype of the wise old man is not about certainty, but about the capacity to live with uncertainty, to trust in the process of individuation, and to find meaning in the mystery of life. By choosing yourself, you open yourself to the wisdom of this archetype. It is through the quiet listening to your inner guide that you begin to navigate the complexities of life with grace and understanding. The wise old man speaks through dreams, symbols, and moments of quiet reflection. When you heed his call, you align yourself with the deeper wisdom of the soul, guiding you on your journey toward wholeness. Choosing yourself is not only a psychological process, but a spiritual one. It is the recognition that the self is sacred, that within each of us resides the divine spark. The true self is not separate from the divine, it is a manifestation of it. In the process of individuation, you come to understand that the divine is not an external force, but an internal presence. It is through choosing yourself that you awaken to the sacredness of your own being. The divine within you is not something to be worshipped or revered in a traditional sense, but something to be acknowledged and integrated. It is the recognition that every part of your being, the conscious and unconscious, the light and shadow, reflects the divine order of the universe. To choose yourself is to honor the divine in all its forms, to accept that you are a unique expression of the divine and that every aspect of you is worthy of love and respect. This realization transforms the way you experience life. No longer do you see yourself as separate from the divine. You recognize that you are a part of it. You are not merely a passive observer of the sacred, but an active participant in its unfolding. The more you choose yourself, the more you align with the divine flow of life, experiencing a deeper connection to the sacredness of existence. The recognition of the divine within you is both humbling and empowering. It is the understanding that you are not insignificant, but an integral part of the grand tapestry of the cosmos. In choosing yourself, you are not only embracing your individuality, but also embracing your divinity. And in this realization, you step into a life of greater purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. When you choose yourself, you not only transform your own life, but also create a legacy for future generations. The journey of individuation is not an isolated process, it is part of a larger continuum of human evolution. As you deepen into your authentic self, you contribute to the collective wisdom of humanity, offering a path for others to follow. The wisdom gained through choosing yourself is not meant to be kept to yourself. It is meant to be shared, passed on, and integrated into the collective consciousness. The process of individuation creates a ripple effect that extends far beyond the individual. As you become more whole, you contribute to the wholeness of the world, offering a model of authenticity, integrity, and self-awareness for others to emulate. Your legacy is not something you leave behind when you are gone, but something you create with every choice you make, with every step you take on your journey. The true impact of choosing yourself is not measured by material success or fame, but by the depth of the transformation you undergo and the example you set for others. In this way, the legacy of the self is not just a personal achievement, but a gift to the world. In choosing yourself, you create a legacy of wisdom and transformation, one that ripples outward, touching the lives of those around you and those who come after you. The journey of individuation is not only about personal fulfillment, but about contributing to the collective evolution of humanity, offering a path to greater wholeness, understanding, and connection.